History is filled with legendary figures larger than life in their deeds and their stories, and sometimes some of these figures seem almost too strange to be real. Yet these are people that lived, fought, and shaped the world and history around them. And so today we're going to be diving into the lives of 11 people whose incredible stories belong in a fantasy novel, but they're 100% real. Now, first up, we have Gilles de Rais, a French knight whose story begins in glory and, sadly, as most great stories do, ends in tragedy. Now, he was once a trusted companion of Joan of Arc, yes, the Joan of Arc, and he fought bravely on the battlefield in numerous battles, including the 100 Years' War, earning himself a reputation as a heroic warrior. But after Joan's death, Gilles' life took a much darker turn. He became completely obsessed with alchemy and the occult, and reportedly he started dabbling in necromancy, seeking power through dark rituals. Now, that's pretty heavy, but worse still, he was then convicted of pretty horrific crimes, including the serial murders of children that he allegedly confessed to. Now, this descent of his from noble knight to tragic fall really just fits into any dark fantasy and is just really up. Now next we have John the Blind, the 14th century king of Bohemia. He wasn't always blind, but later in his life developed some sort of inflammation or something that made him lose his vision. And despite being completely blind later in his life, John refused to give up his warrior spirit, and in an almost unbelievable act of bravery at the Battle of Crécy in 1346, he famously ordered his knights to tie his horses' reins to theirs. He tied his horse to their horse, allowing him to defiantly charge into battle, knowing full well that he was not going to survive. That feels like something straight out of an epic fantasy. This fearless warrior king choosing to die with honor in the heat of battle rather than in the comfort of a throne. This blind king who refused to let fate dictate his legacy. Now, John did die in that battle, and he was allegedly found with all of his men surrounding him, but his determination to fight, despite his disability, is the thing that elevates his life to the level of absolute legend. Now, next up is Grigori Rasputin, one of the most infamous figures in Russian history. You might already know the name. He was a mystic healer who gained influence over the Russian monarchy, particularly Tsarina Alexandra. Now, this guy was known for his intense gaze, supposedly it was hypnotic, and there were even rumors that he had supernatural powers. So Rasputin's life was just steeped in mystery. He claimed to have the ability to heal the sick, particularly the Tsar's son, Alexei, who suffered from hemophilia. But what makes Rasputin truly legendary are the stories surrounding his death, or lack thereof. People tried to poison him, he was shot, he was beaten, and allegedly just would not die. And it wasn't until he was shot and then thrown into a river that he finally died. And you can see why there's so many stories about this guy being immortal or still around. Rasputin really just had that sort of dark sorcerer vibe. Then there's Boudica, or Boadicea as I've heard it pronounced as well, the fierce Celtic warrior queen who led a rebellion against the Roman Empire around 60 or 61 AD. Now, after the Romans committed some pretty terrible crimes against her and her daughters, and I'm sure you can guess what those might have been, Boudica rallied her people, leading a revolt that burned cities to the ground, entire cities, one of them being Londinium, or London. Her leadership in the face of overwhelming odds and this unbreakable will of hers to defend her homeland is really what paints her as this warrior queen that we still talk about today. She was unyielding and vengeful and utterly commanding on the battlefield, and even though her uprising was eventually crushed, we can see how Boudica's legacy lives on to this day as a symbol of resistance and strength, and why her story feels like something that we could find in an epic fantasy about this wronged queen that leads her people against an empire. Now, the next one is kind of on the nose and a little easy, but we would be remiss to leave them out. Leonardo da Vinci is one of the greatest geniuses the world has ever known. We know him mostly as a painter for things like the Mona Lisa, but he was also an inventor, a scientist, and a visionary, and he created designs for machines that were far beyond his time. Flying machines, military weapons, helicopters. His sketches and notebooks are filled with ideas that seemed almost magical to people from his time, and he also just seemed to possess this level of knowledge that was far beyond the Renaissance, almost as if he had glimpsed the future or something. Maybe he did. Now, in a fantasy setting, Da Vinci would undoubtedly be the wise, eccentric inventor or wizard that was trying to unlock the mysteries of the universe because, after all, he did dissect human bodies. Now, next up, and I'm sure I'm going to butcher this, we have Zhang Sanfeng, another historic figure whose life is something that blurs the line between myth and reality. Now, Zhang was a Taoist monk and a martial artist, and allegedly lived to be well over 200 years old. He is considered to be the martial artist that invented Tai Chi and became a sort of near mythical figure in Chinese folklore, and feels like the story of this wandering sage. His long life and his mastery of the martial arts led people to talking about his ancient wisdom and his mystical powers, and legends say that Zhang could control the elements and that his understanding of balance and harmony is what made him this almost supernatural figure. Now, whether he actually lived to be 200 years or not, that's up for debate, but his reputation as a martial arts master who defied the limits of the human body makes him a perfect candidate for a fantasy tale, and is something that we can see to this day, as there are monks alive today that are able to do things that we can only dream about and at times do feel superhuman. So it may not be too far from the truth that this Zhang Sanfeng actually existed and did some of those amazing things. Look, I get it. You want to be the DM that blows everyone's mind. You want to have a session so good that players can't stop bragging about you. But sadly, it just never happens. You put all of that work in, and they just do their thing. You know, they eat their pizza, and they go home with a see you next week gang. Well, here's the trick to taking your session from just another week to holy that gave me the chills. Describe is a platform where the DM gets one subscription. Literally, if every player chipped in the price of a coffee, you could play for a whole year. And the DM builds these incredible immersive soundscapes with maps and text and ambience and music and sound effects all right there in one spot for all of the players to experience right there. And if you want to check out what I mean, click the link down below and use my code FANTASYFORGE. I literally got chills the first time I was being run through the program. I can't even imagine what it must be like for players the first time. So go check out Describe. You won't regret it. It's the secret trick you've been looking for. And if your players don't lose their minds the first time you introduce it to them, then honestly, they just don't deserve you. Now, up next, we have Mothe, who was an exotic dancer and a spy in World War I. Her life was filled with all sorts of intrigue and deception and mystery and all sorts of craziness because she was born in the Netherlands and got a name for herself as this exotic performer, captivating audiences all over Europe with her allure and her mystery. And then underneath all of that glamorous facade, Mothe was also a spy, using her charm and her seductiveness to extract military secrets from powerful men. Specifically, powerful Frenchmen. She was eventually arrested and executed by a firing squad in France for espionage. Now, it's important to note that it is said that she was used as a scapegoat and that the files that were used to secure her conviction were actually false, although to this day the full extent of her involvement remains a mystery. Her legacy lives on to this day and has inspired a lot of femme fatale stories. Now, next up we have Antoine de la Mothe Cadillac, best known as the founder of Detroit. Now, this guy has his own bizarre and supernatural tale. Now, according to legend, Cadillac had a fateful encounter with a Nain Rouge? Nain Rouge? I don't know, a demonic creature of some kind that is said to bring bad luck. Now, this red dwarf is rumored to have cursed Cadillac, leading to his downfall and a series of really, really bad things that happened to him. I guess he disrespected the creature, and his whole life just spiraled into misfortune. He lost all of his money, his entire family fortune gone. He completely fell out of favor with the French government, and his entire political career faced significant setbacks for the rest of his life. He was also imprisoned for alleged misconduct during his time as governor of Louisiana. He was exiled from Detroit, the city that he founded, and what's worse is that none of his family, his kids, his wife, none of them got any of the money, so they lost everything. His legacy as founder of Detroit is overshadowed by this crazy story of his. Up next is Clíodhna, an Irish druidess from ancient Celtic lore that was associated with dark magic and all sorts of craziness, including dying giving birth. But she is most famously associated with the beginning of Halloween. She was believed to have control over the powers of life and death. She was supposedly a sorceress whose connection to the ancient world and rituals made her very feared and revered by her people. Now, Clíodhna was a druidess and the daughter of Mug Ruith, who lived on Valentia Island in Kerry. Now, this is where the story gets a little weird because it is said that her father and her were able to travel the world on a spinning wheel of fire, and that she allegedly learned from Simon the sorcerer. And she became such a powerful sorceress that the person who trained her, Simon, became so jealous that he actually set his 3 sons on her, who then defiled her. She was absolutely crestfallen and violated. She returned to Ireland, where she gave birth to her 3 sons and died in childbirth. She was then buried on the same hill that she died on. Now, coming up next, we have Savitri, who was a legendary Indian princess that outwitted death itself. You see, when her husband died, she followed Yama, the god of death, and through her wit and her devotion convinced him to return her husband's soul to the living. Now, this story of love and bravery and really just sheer intelligence is what makes her a hero, because you see, she followed death and the entire time gave him a bunch of reasons why he couldn't take her husband's soul. And Death was so surprised with the way that she spoke and her eloquence that he offered her anything that she wanted except for her husband's life. And she asked for a bunch of different things, including for her father-in-law to get his sight back, to be the mother of a bunch of children. But every time she asked for something, the god of death was very specific in saying, you can have that, but you can't have your husband back. Except for one time when he forgot to mention that they couldn't have her husband back. The moment that Savitri realized that the god of death had slipped up and forgot to say that, she immediately asked for her husband's soul back. And Death, I guess, just had to respect the game and gave it to her. And then finally, we have one of the biggest legends of today, Edward Teach, who was better known as Blackbeard. Now, Blackbeard was a notorious pirate who ruled the seas with an iron fist, and he gained himself a fearsome reputation with supposedly a very terrifying appearance that he would braid slow-burning fuses into his beard and light them during battle, which gave him the impression that there was smoke emanating from him, or fire. Whether that's true or not, we may never know, but his larger-than-life persona and his ruthless tactics as a pirate are what set him apart from all the other swashbucklers, and commanding a crew of misfits and treasure hunters, and just imagining him on all those daring raids across the high seas really makes you think of his life of adventure and treachery, and ultimately his death. And I think that any heroic pirate death deserves to be put into a list of legendary people from our time. So there you have it. Those are 11 different people whose legends and life stories are larger than life. And while they may teeter on the edge of fantasy or sound like they belong in a fantasy story, these were real people from our very own world. I hope they inspire your world building. And a quick update for you guys on my little furry tentacled and clawed buddy Tobias. You came through for me, you guys. I asked for your help and you came through from all over. You went to my Instagram, you went to the comments down below, and collectively, as a party, we all rolled 190 on our skill checks. And while there were some fumbles and some barbarians that, just did their bestest, what we did find out was that the track seemed to lead into this really creepy dark forest. And on top of that, there's some sort of weird, strange wall of thorns that goes around for miles. Now, if you're still willing to help me find Tobias and venture in, grab a d20 and let me know in the comments down below how you plan to get around this wall of thorns. And let me know in the comments down below what other people you've heard of. There are millions of people that have probably lived with some of the craziest stories, and I want to hear about them. So let me know in the comments down below what I missed, who I forgot. Thank you so much for watching. Forge on, my friends, and we'll see you next time, adventurers.